You know, I was doing this wonderful project of ours called Conversations with Colleagues, and I introduced a lot of my friends, and my friend said to me, "Why don't you do one of yourself? You've got a lot of stories." And I thought, well, actually, she said I should write a book, and I said, "There's no way in hell that I would, excuse me, that I would write a book, because it's very difficult to do that, to read it, to write it, to read it. But if you are talking, for me, it's much easier because it comes out, it flows out of you like a stream." Anyway, I thought what I would talk about, which was the first Broadway show that I did with Harold Pinter. Can you believe it? I was very, very lucky. And it was very interesting because I was not a star. I was not a known actress at the time or anything else like that. And I said to a friend of mine, "How can I get an audition for this?" And it turns out that my friend, Johnny Handy, was the stage manager for the show. And I found that out, and I called him, and I didn't call him first. I think I spoke to Barry Moss, who at that time was an agent. And I said, "What do you think, Barry? What should I..." Oh, I know. He suggested that I suggest to Johnny Handy, who is my friend, that I read opposite all the actors. And I thought to myself, oh, what is that going to look like? I mean, this is where my head was. You know, you just don't realize about yourself until afterwards. Because I thought, well, if I can't get an audition, Mr. Pinter is not going to have anything to do with me. And Barry Moss said, "Does he know you?" And I said, "No." He said, "Will your agent be able to get you an audition?" And I said, "I don't think so." He said, "Call Johnny Handy on the phone and ask him if you can read opposite everybody." And I thought, oh, okay, I just don't want to look like a fool. I mean, it's amazing when you think of yourself sometimes. And Johnny said, "Oh, yeah, that's a great idea," because Claire Bloom was playing the lead, and she is a woman, and I would be the woman, and I would be reading with two kids, or the kids that were auditioning for it, and I would be reading with the women who were auditioning for the housekeeper. And the interesting thing happened, which was that the children came in, and there was one young woman, young, she was 5 years old. And she had this wonderful, strange look about her. And Pinter liked her, and he wanted to cast her in that part. And guess who else came in? Little Sarah Jessica Parker came in. And she was dressed, her mother knew what to do. She had, her hair was in curls, and she had the most beautiful white lace dress with these little white stockings and Mary Janes. I can still see her walking in. She was so beautiful. And her brother came in too, Toby, and they both auditioned. Toby was a little bit tall for the part. The boy that they cast, Michael, was, he wasn't, I mean, I don't know the difference, but there was a difference between Toby and that little boy, who seemed very delicate, which was kind of good for that character. Well, the decision was made that Sarah Jessica would be the understudy and Toby would be the understudy. So they would all go to England, where we would rehearse, and the little girl would play the part of the child, playing opposite at the age of 5, Claire Bloom. Claire took one look at her and said no. We were in England. I'll never forget this. This was such an extraordinary feeling for me. Pinter goes up to this little 5-year-old girl and says to her, we would really love it if you became the understudy and you stayed with the show and Sarah would play the part. Well, the little girl at the age of 5 was devastated, absolutely devastated. And the woman who was playing the housekeeper said to her, because we were all kind of living in this place, said to her, you know, you don't have to do what Mr. Pinter asks you to do. And she said, no, he makes you feel like you have to. No, you don't have to. If you don't want to do that, you don't have to do it. So she decided that she would not be the understudy. And it was very moving for me, because at the age of that age, that really affects you terribly. I mean, the girl went on to be a very successful person in every way, but I did see her mother, I don't remember how long ago, and I said, hi, how was she and everything, and how was her daughter, and she listed to me all the wonderful things that her daughter was doing, and I thought to myself, you don't have to do that. I think your daughter is talented and wonderful, and but it affected her from the time she was 5 years old. And it was not anybody's fault. It was just the way the cookie crumbled. And that's the way the theater is, unfortunately. And we were rehearsing in England in the Boltons, which was a lovely little area. And it was when all of the princes of the Mideast, and they were very rich, and of course they asked that the famous store, I'm forgetting, which is terrible, but that it be closed for them so that they could go and shop there, and they bought out the store. Anyway, we were rehearsing, and we saw some of this going on, and we were rehearsing in this small little place, and of course Claire Bloom was a delicate creature. She's very delicate, and I thought, how do I get that way? Because I was standing by for her. And it was really an experience, because I'm glad that she was on as long as we played, because it would have been a big shock for people, because I'm much, anyway, Claire is a much more delicate creature, and also a much more famous lady than I ever was. But the way I got this part was very interesting also. This is how we don't even realize, I don't even remember how young I was, but I was young. And I was reading opposite everybody, and I was reading opposite all the children and everything, and the boys came in, and I started to act opposite the boy. And from the front of the house, Mr. Pinter says, "Stop it! Stop it! Just read the words." And I thought, oh my God. Oh my God. I thought, well, that's the end of that. And I very quietly walked backstage when the boy walked off, and Johnny said, "You did exactly what he asked you to do now. Go back on stage as though nothing has happened." Nothing has happened. I thought I was going to die, but okay. So I come back on stage, and he comes to the edge of the stage, and he said, I'm sorry, Catherine, but I had to see what the child would do without any help. And he said, you know what? That's a really good piece of direction. Say to yourself, I'm not going to get upset, I'm not going to get upset, I'm not going to get upset, and it will eventually work on you. Which it did, of course. And I read opposite all the children, and then we were having a break for lunch. And Claire was then going to come in and see the children. And I went down to At that time, it was called Charlie's for lunch. And by the time I got there, I had been saying, I'm not going to get upset, I'm not going to get upset, I'm not going to get upset. I could not hold a coffee cup. I was shaking so much inside because I was pushing down everything so that I would not be. It was a wonderful piece of direction. And I came back to the theater, and Pinter was walking down the street, and he said to me, Catherine, would you like to understudy Claire and play the ghost? And by that time, I went, ah! And I grabbed him because the energy, all of this thing inside of me was, oh my God. And I'm sure he was a little bit shocked, but anyway. And we went to the theater, and I read opposite everybody while Claire was in the audience, which was a bit of a difficult situation as far as I was concerned, but that's what you do. And I got the role, and as I was, this is another thing. I'm in the back of the theater at one point. Claire was going to be reading with some of the children, I think. And I was in the back of the theater, and Pinter and the producer were coming up the aisle, and Pinter said to me, would you like to go to England with us? We want you to come to England. Well, the producer could have died because he did not want to take me. He wanted to save money. And Pinter, whatever Pinter wanted, happened. And I could see him in the back. I said, oh, I'd love to go to England. We got our costumes at the National Theatre, our wigs at the National Theatre. It was my first experience with the top of the top. I mean, it's quite remarkable that I was so, it's like one of my people who did conversations with colleagues was Terry Ralston, and she said that she didn't realize at her age what was happening. And the same thing with me. I didn't realize. I know Pinter was a very famous man, but and Claire Bloom, I knew how famous she was, but I didn't realize what I was being put into, which was an extraordinary experience. So extraordinary. I guess it was before we went out of town, Pinter found out that he had hepatitis and mononucleosis. And he was sent back to England, and they said, if you ever drink again, you will die. He went back to England, and we were sent out on the road without a director. I mean, all I can tell you is we should have known then it was the wrong thing, but we were on the road doing the show. I don't think we got very good reviews. I can't remember. People would come to see Claire because she was so wonderful, but I just don't remember the reviews very much. I was having a great time because, of course, I was playing this this part, and it was quite wonderful. Oh, one thing that was really fun to talk about. When we had our dress run through, when you all walk in your costumes, I had this wig that they had for me, and they hadn't fixed it. And I had it in my hand, and I said to Pinter, this is really, and he said, somebody get a mirror. And this mirror was brought from someplace. Somebody come here and put that on her head, quickly. And everybody was running around. Whenever he said anything, things happened. And they put the wig on my head. It still wasn't so great, but they were fixing and doing things and everything. And he said, Catherine, look, all we see are your eyes. He could have gotten anything he wanted from me. I mean, it was like he knew exactly what to do. I mean, that's a good director. That was fun. But anyway, then we came to, then 2 days before we opened in New York, he came back. And we had our rehearsal with him there. And at one time, the prop man wanted to save money on the tomatoes that were coming in with the housekeeper. So he created a tomato and he put it on this plate. And with the lighting, it looked like this purple thing. And Pinters from the front of the house says, "What is that? What is that?" And the prop man said, "Well, I was trying," he said, "Get a real tomato, for heaven's sakes. A real tomato." So, okay, he was trying to save money for the producer. And then the other thing that happened was the stagehands were so uninterested in the play that the sunrise was supposed to be a sunrise. And Pinter said, "Do it on 15 counts. 1." And he made them do it on the 15 counts, which while he was counting, it was perfect. While he wasn't there, the sunrise happened like, that was it. I mean, everybody did what he told them to do, except when he wasn't there, and then it was not so good. Anyway, so we had our opening night, and my dressing room was filled with the most gorgeous bouquets of flowers. It was so wonderful. It was my first Broadway show. It was so exciting and everything. I think we got the worst reviews that you've ever had. And the producer wanted to have the theater. So he put up our closing notice the next day. So my dressing room smelled like a funeral parlor with all these dead flowers. Anyway, that is the story of my first Broadway show. And let me tell you, it was a great experience. Even though we didn't last, it was such a lesson in so many ways. You do the thing that you're asked to do and you find the answer. So this is the first one that I'm doing alone. We'll see if there are any other interesting stories in the future.